Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Communicative Leader. I'm your host, Dr. Leah O, and today we're joined by an extraordinary leader in executive coaching, Dr. Sylvia Rohde-Liebenau. With a rich 30-year career in elevating C-suite leaders and entrepreneurs, Sylvia empowers individuals to flourish in today's rapidly evolving landscape. Sylvia, the author of the successful book, Who's in Charge? Lead with Real Power and Create an Impact in a Chaotic World, masterfully combines visionary thought leadership, personal stories, and practical advice to guide leaders toward greater energy, power, purpose, and fulfillment. Her impressive credentials include being a leader development expert and an EMCC accredited senior professional coach with extensive experience in international and financial institutions. In today's episode, we will dive deep into Sylvia's proven strategies for navigating leadership challenges and fostering organizational development. If you're ready to lead with real power and make an impactful difference, this episode offers invaluable insights and actionable guidance. Let's dive in and have some fun. Hello, and welcome to The Communicative Leader, hosted by me, Dr. Leah O'Million-Hodges. My friends call me Dr. O. I'm a professor of communication and a leadership communication expert. On The Communicative Leader, we're working to make your work life what you want it to be. Sylvia, welcome to The Communicative Leader. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. And, before we dive into this fun conversation, I was hoping you could start by sharing your journey to where you are now, a senior executive coach.
First of all, Leah, thank you so much for having me. I really feel honored and I'm very excited to have this conversation today with you. And your question, how did I get to where I am today? Working on leadership and also communication and questions of power. So when I thought about what I wanted to study at university, I was thinking between psychology and political science. And in the end, I opted for political science. But I very much worked on psychological topics always around impact, like social power and communication. In my master's, then also in my PhD, which was in international relations. And then I had my first job at the European Commission in development cooperation, where I wondered why, what does an organization, what makes an organization tick? What makes an organization succeed? Why do some organizations change and others stagnate? How does that all work? And I was part of this system and trying to figure it out. But then I became a consultant, wanting to more deal with the change and learn about it and advise it. And there I had the opportunity to participate in an organization development training. So I wanted to study that further. And part of that was coaching. And it opened a new world for me. And what I loved about coaching immediately was the process of discovery. It's not teaching on someone. It is helping someone to uncover something that they already know and to really create the best out of themselves rather than learning something from a book. And we already briefly exchanged about the joys of academia, which are great, and they give great gifts to the world. And at the same time, sometimes we also have to find the wisdom in ourselves.
Exactly. So beautifully put. And I love too that journey in recognizing that when you start in political science, it might on the surface feel so different from leaderships and organizations and relationships. And you just realize it's a different level, but you're still able to draw those parallels.
It's people.
In really
it's
important
people.
ways. Yeah, exactly.
In my master's, I studied the UN Disarmament Conference in Geneva. And I wondered, why did these diplomats talk about, 80%, they didn't talk about arms, but about politics and values and who had the better political system, etc. And I interviewed a number of diplomats and asked one, why is all this talk about the merits of the political systems
Mm-hmm.
and blaming each other on things they did, but not about arms, but about politics.
Yeah.
And he said, you have to understand that we are human beings here. And whether we want it or not, it affects us when someone
Mm-hmm.
says something to us, well, your country sucks.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so that we can put a poker face to that, but it still has
Yeah.
an impact. So it makes sense to invest
Mm-hmm.
energy into this kind of communication, which seems on the surface to have nothing to do with the facts. And you, as
Yes.
communications expert, would be able to tell, like, to give 10 lectures about that, probably.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. It is fascinating. Like we're talking about this, but we're actually talking
Yes,
about this. And this is why it's important for the relationship,
exactly,
right?
exactly.
So, Sylvia, I'd love to learn more about your book, Who's in Charge? Lead with Real Power and Create an Impact in a
Mm,
Chaotic World. And I was hoping you could, I have a few questions about it, but I was hoping you could start by talking to us about the inspiration
mm, mm,
behind this
mm.
work.
Well, it links very much to your first question because it really comes out of like more than 30 years of studying power in politics and in organizations, having been part of large organizations and seeing like old power, as I call it, being quite dominant still in many places. Old power meaning force and control, um, lose, hiding behind rules rather than being authentic, and also sometimes being, well, this is what I stand for, rather than saying, well, it has been said,
Mm-hmm.
etc. And so seeing that old power at play and often not helping the organizations to succeed, and also helping individual leaders not to succeed. And so I got really curious about, like, why does it not work and what could work better.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, for about 17 years, I was um, responsible for various organizational change, human resources, leadership topics at the European Investment Bank, and which is kind of like the World Bank, focusing more on Europe. And what I found there was that this fantastic institution was often holding itself back because its leadership did not, like, had not fully embraced like the more modern way of leading, which is more about really leading with purpose, not only having the purpose
Mm-hmm.
as a wall decoration, but
Yeah.
actually
Mm-hmm.
including the purpose in the day-to-day business.
Mm-hmm.
um, then also being really collaborative, rather than saying, well, team, you have to collaborate, but actually um, rewarding individual contributions and also people elbowing
Mm-hmm.
each other,
Yep.
or rewarding also silos. I mean,
Yes.
everyone knows
Yep.
about the silos in traditional organizations, and people like
Yeah.
moan about them, yes, but then
Mm-hmm.
people are rewarded for
Yep.
actually serving these silos. So that we see going on, like,
Mm-hmm.
also like a really fantastic institution which I was proud to serve,
Mm-hmm.
like limiting itself because of this old power.
Yep.
And then it became even more important when the European Investment Bank received the mandate to become the climate bank. And
Oh.
when you deal with
Yep.
climate, you deal with
Mm-hmm.
organizations who, or companies, politicians who will say on a Sunday afternoon, climate is wonderful, and yes, we should
Mm-hmm.
preserve nature and the climate. But on a Monday morning, they will think about their pocketbook. And so you have to be smarter, and you have to, like, be more collaborative and like purposeful,
Yep.
engaging with your stakeholders and
Mm-hmm.
also with your staff, because they actually have to work harder to make this work. So how do
Yeah.
you convince people
Yeah.
to go the extra mile? And all that made me think already when I was still at the European Investment Bank and helping to create a leadership model that would promote that kind of leadership. And then when I left, I focused even more on that, on like helping leaders to transform their leadership. And that's what I do
Mm-hmm.
today. And that's what became the book, and also my method, Smart Power, to really
Mm-hmm.
help people understand, like, how do they really find power to make it really powerful?
Yep.
How do they manage their energy? Because in
Mm-hmm.
this very hectic world, often we get down under because we
Mm-hmm.
run behind things and we don't manage our energy. And like in the book, the third part next to energy and power is legacy. How do we make it meaningful?
Yes, I love all of what you said, Sylvia. I was thinking, what a fascinating, kind of assignment you were in the bank, and witnessing all of this old power at play, and also recognizing all of the potential. And that's
Mm,
a really big shift. I think if people aren't kind of entrenched in this area, sure, on the
mm,
surface, you're like, oh yeah, that's a change. But when a culture is entrenched in that old power, it's
yeah,
really, really challenging. Because, like you said, people are used to being rewarded. For
yeah.
those who did really well with old power succeeded more quickly than
Hmm.
others who didn't. And then we kind of flip that on its head. But so important for transforming the way in which, like you said, purpose for first, but also I think the way in which people relate with organizations, if they make that connection and they
Mm,
stay, can really be a transformative for employees and the organization.
yeah, yeah, indeed, indeed. And it's sometimes not that easy because when someone has learned to get to the top with old power, then often
Yeah.
it feels even scary to change that. Was it all
Oh,
wrong
yeah.
what I did
Change the
yesterday?
rules.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we have to know that it's a shift in mindset more than
Yep.
in just behaviors.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's keep talking about real power. And in your book, that's what you kind of talk about, what this real power is.
Mm,
And I was hoping you could explain to us what real power means to you, and then also how leaders can kind of harness it or be mindful of it to make changes.
mm. So for me, real power is not only having the power, but doing something with it that is valuable.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. The other is real power is the ability to create intended, creative, constructive outcomes. With that, I want to say, like a volcano
Mm-hmm.
creates destruction, doesn't have power.
Mm-hmm.
It's like hugely forceful,
Mm-hmm.
and we can be afraid of it, and we have to
Mm-hmm.
take account of it. But it's not powerful because it doesn't create intended outcomes. And a kid, for instance, that you
Mm-hmm.
have family playing Monopoly, and the kid is unhappy
Mm-hmm.
that it doesn't win and tosses the whole
Yep.
board
Yeah.
across the
Mm-hmm.
table. That creates an impact, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not powerful because it's
Yes.
not the impact that leads anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so when as a leader, I only use force and control, but I don't create anything, or I just intimidate people. But again, I don't really I'm suboptimal
Mm-hmm.
in what I
Mm-hmm.
achieve because
Mm-hmm.
I create fear and stagnation and chaos, etc. Then I'm not
Mm-hmm.
powerful. I'm like the
Mm-hmm.
volcano or like the kid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I really love those visualizations. When you were talking, I was thinking it's the leader who's like, I've got a hammer or a rubber mallet, and that's it. Like, these are my two tools. And you realize there's a whole, you can go to the store and develop so many other tools.
Yeah.
There's so many other things at your disposal. But that people get comfortable. And like you said, if you've climbed the career ladder with these two tools,
Mm.
and then we say, oh, just kidding, there are more, that can be a hard shift, but a really important
Yeah,
one for the
exactly.
collective.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's think about thriving in chaos. And this is something that is, I'm sure everyone listening feels this it
Mm.
will resonate with them. I find that when I'm thinking about chaos, and now, like, I find myself touching my chest, like I can feel it in my body. So we know there's so much chaos right now, so much uncertainty in today's political world, even in our organizations, families, homes, communities. So, Sylvia, what are some key strategies that you recommend for being able to thrive amidst these challenges and kind of maintaining your purpose, even when everything else feels a little bit out of balance?
Yes, thriving in chaos. For me, who have been sometimes in chaotic situations, especially in my work life, what has always helped me is to have had a personal practice to keep like my calm and balance overall. Like
Mm-hmm.
for many years, I've been meditating. and doing like physical practices. And that doesn't mean that I never get nervous or upset, but underlying there is a strength that I gain from these personal practices. So I believe, especially in these times where there's a lot of chaos floating around that we cannot influence, that has nothing to do with what we are doing in our world, to have this personal practice simply to feel more healthy and in balance, that really helps. So that's one thing. And then in my experience, like in my work, in what I want to do, and then not to be like tossed over by things that are happening, is if I know that I'm connected to my purpose, to what I want to achieve and why, then that gives me great strength and stamina. So it's not like something happens and then I give up. No, if I'm really know why I'm doing things and what is my purpose, I will persist, even if it's a bit difficult. And then there's another thing, which is thinking about it. It's like to be able to step back sometimes and see the whole. So not to get, like, even when we get stressed, then let's step back and see what's actually happening here. So that allows us to get unstressed, even in the stress. And then finally, I would say connection and collaboration. So not feeling alone, but being together with other, co-creating in creating solutions, and simply being in connection with people, with humans. So to also have like, oh, this was a really bad day. Can we talk?
Yes. Thank you. Those are really, I love how concrete those suggestions are. And they're things that when we're listening, like I wrote down purpose and a step back. And I connected with purpose because I think, especially when there are different opportunities and so much going on in organizations, and you're like, I would like to help with that, but I'm doing this. Purpose can be kind of that North Star to keep you fulfilling what you set out to do. And then when that project is done or nearing completion, it can just, like you said, to that perspective and taking the step back then too and saying, big picture, what am I not seeing when I'm got my nose down?
Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. So helpful. So shifting back to power, and you mentioned before about smart power. So I know that you are the founder of the Smart Power method, and I'd love to learn more about this, including the inspiration and kind of what goes into smart power.
Yeah. So the inspiration came from through my book. I had the privilege to give a workshop at Harvard Alumni Women. It was an online seminar, was about when I was just finishing my book. And they said, could you please? And I said, what a huge honor and privilege. Let me do this. And then I was thinking, like, what part of my book am I going to talk about? And then I said, well, I'm going to focus on power. But let's make that simple. Let's draw it all together. So they won't have the occasion to read like half of the book. How to make it simple. And then that's how I came up with Smart Power. And adding actually one element that is not so much highlighted in the book, which is the first one, which is systemic. So SMART is an acronym, stands for systemic, merging, authentic, personal, relational, and transformational. So SMART. And systemic means that what we just said, we have to be able as leaders in this chaotic world to step back sometimes and also to see the connections between elements and to see the long-term ripple effects. When we don't do that, we get lost in the little details and we're less effective. And maybe 50 years ago, it was less important to have a systemic view. Today, it is crucial to have a systemic view. We can run a small shop, maybe without that. But if we are running a larger organization or like a startup where we have to understand what's going on in the environment, systemic is crucial. So that's the first. Then is merging, is about like merging power and resources, having the courage to give up some of our control in order to merge it with someone else's like zone of influence control to have more power together. And that is sometimes counterintuitive. It feels scary because I know what I control, so let me control it. And I think I know better than the others. And
right,
to
always just ask us.
yes, let me do it. I can do this better. And to learn, which I actually had to learn, like not painfully, but with difficulties, that I started out also even in the coaching, like world, working with other coaches to create workshops, that I had to be the good student and do it well. And then I learned, wow, it's so much more fruitful if I'm not the good student, but if I'm curious what the others have to bring. So then we will together create something that is like A and B makes C. So it's neither A nor B, but it's something that is actually bigger than A and B and C. So that is what merging is about. And it sometimes feels scary, but it's very power generating. So that's systemic merging. And then we have authentic personal, which is sitting really at the core of smart. Because if we don't have access to our full, authentic, like real personal power, which very much sits in our body also, like our connection to our body, our emotions, our intuition, being able therefore to show up authentically, then whatever we can think of, we can't really translate it so well into action if we don't have this authentic personal power that sits at the core of leadership, therefore. Then we have relational power for the R, which is the more practical brother of the merging power. It's more like, how do I create trust? How do I get into relationship, into connection with others without yet merging, but being more in the out there, connecting with others and simply fostering relationships and alliances. So important. I mean, if we look at today's political landscape also, we can see that actually alliances are really important, and we forget them at our own peril. So forget about merging, like sharing something, but simply being a trusted ally, a trusted friend, a trusted colleague, a trusted partner. It's very crucial to our own.
Yeah.
So that's relational power. And the last one is transformational power, which has to do with the power of purpose that we also talked about. Like we can only transform and go beyond the like transactional little things and really create meaningful impact if we have a purpose. So that's what the smart is about.
Excellent. I was just jotting down all these notes because I just love this, because it really kind of flips the old idea of power on its head, right? Because it was all transactional. We're like a traditional, the old way of doing it. And we certainly weren't thinking about relationships and having courage. And I think too, like as you're saying and thinking about this, is such a thoughtful, sophisticated way of considering power, but you've done such a beautiful way of framing it in a way that people can access, make sense of, because then they can actually use it.
Do something with it.
Yeah, we can start to see this change rather than like, oh, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Or wouldn't that be something? So really, really incredible work, Sylvia. I
Thank
love
you.
this. I'm going to come back to this. I'm teaching a leadership and power class, a graduate class, actually this summer.
Wow.
So it'll be something. Yeah. Like so timely.
Yeah.
So thinking more about your smart power innovation, that you use this approach to help overcome these old power dynamics, these pain points. And I was hoping you could see us what maybe this looks like in an organization when we're applying your smart power method and helping to transform that traditional approach.
Yeah. So we talked before about some aspects of the traditional approaches, for instance, the silos, the hiding information rather than sharing information, the not so authentic personal power, where sometimes leaders say, yeah, but if I'm more authentic, including and more vulnerable, Will they then not use that and undermine me, etc.? Of course, you're not going to be blue-eyed and believe everything that people tell you, etc. But normally, if you show up more truthfully and with greater vulnerability, meaning honesty in the end, then you create trust. And trust is a superpower when you can create that. So that is one thing. About the silos, it's really an old habit of organizations. And as I see it, silos were originally created for good reasons, to have checks and balances in an organization. So you had risk management. Actually, 50 years ago, you didn't even have risk management, but you had the control functions. You had sales and marketing and back offices, and each silo had their functions, believing that their functions were probably the most important one to be taken very seriously. So they had to have a leading voice, and others should follow us, etc. And why do they block us if it's frontline? Why do they not listen to us if it's more supporting roles? Rather than saying, what do we want to achieve together?
Yes.
What is our joint goal? How do we make this company, this organization stronger, more competitive? And for instance, if I take up risk management again in modern organizations, not how do we block what the sales people do, but how do we help them be safe and sell it better? So be involved early on, but with a constructive outlook to create solutions that actually work, that are not like against the rules. We keep the rules, but we are like intelligent to see, okay, what is actually possible, and make that work, to advise our partners rather than stop them from doing it because we are so important. And that means really a perspective shift. Like, do I see myself as the guardian of, and what my voice has to be heard, or do I see myself also in a servant role? How can I help my colleagues? And I'm just thinking, just comes to my head, soccer game or other sports.
I was thinking that too.
Like, do I have to get the ball into the goal myself? Or is it a fantastic role actually to pass it and someone else gets it because they're actually better positioned to do so? The winning team is the team that has people who pass and not who want to be the stars who mark the goal.
Yes. And, I was thinking this. So I'm coaching my kids' soccer teams now, and they're young kids. And it's so funny because so often I actually have to yell, "You're on the same team." It's like the little ones, they all just go together. And then
go after the ball,
older one, yes, they're getting better, but there's a lot of confusion sometimes. Like, do I run right next to you down the field? Do I get open? And when you're talking about that, I'm like, yes, it's the same team, but so often that can get confusing. And back into organizations, it is always is funny to me when one department will make policies for another to enforce, but without any communication, without observation, without joint brainstorming. And that's when I was thinking, like, you're all on the same team. And for us to be successful, to enjoy this win, we need to work together.
It's a question of trust to start with, but then when you build the trust, it's like a positive reinforcing effect. First, you have to trust others that they will not demolish your toy when you get out there. Sometimes in the corporate world, people don't come forward with things and prepare things in hiding because they fear that others will destroy their beautiful work. So it needs trust, but then when you do it, you actually create trust. So it's a reinforcing model.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. So my next question, Sylvia, when I was preparing for our, for our conversation, is looking at a lot of your work, and you have this such visionary insight, but also this very pragmatic coaching. And I think that's you're like a unicorn, because I think people tend to, I don't like to think in dichotomous terms, but a lot of folks, it's easier for them to live in the visionary, what could this be, and thinking about, what an ideal future might look like. And there are others who tend to be better with that very pragmatic, this is this is how we do this. This is how we unpack it. You do a really beautiful job of blending the two, and that is so meaningful. And I was hoping you could kind of talk to us about, what is your practical advice on that? So how do we take some of this, it can be theoretical, it could be, that visionary thought, but how do we actually then start to enact it so we have change in our workday, in our workplace, in our teams?
How to actually enact the vision
Yeah, how do
that we
we
have?
yeah, exactly.
It's a great question. It's like when I think of when I work now with senior leaders, or back in the time when I was in corporate, it's a longer game. Like you have to have a vision and want to go someplace, and sometimes it doesn't happen immediately.
Yeah.
So you have to have the patience to start something, and then be also accepting when it's not accepted immediately. So like some people say, oh, fantastic, go forward, but then there is resistance a bit later on, and then you come back again. But what is important is really to have that vision. Actually, I just recalled my dad, who was in his 90s, telling me he's one of the fathers of modern risk management in Europe. And he told me that in the company where he was like creating this, he was first told by his boss, "Like that's too far fetched." That was in the 70s.
Oh.
Too far fetched. Like you don't need to do that. And then someone else told him, "Mr. Rohde-Liebenau, keep at it."
Yeah.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah.
It's a very good idea. Just slow, keep at it, and you
Yes.
have the right vision to do it. And I think that's very important that we work
Yes.
with vision, but we don't insist that things happen overnight.
Yeah.
And that also it means that we work a lot in the networks with other people and create alliances. Again, that's super important.
Yeah. And that's really helpful. I wrote down long game when you said that. And I think it requires some maturity, right? And it requires some self-assuredness and, like you said, patience to say, I essentially have this map, or it's forming, but it's still that every day, what am I doing on the day-to-day basis to keep moving forward,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, that's really helpful way of thinking about those, how to connect them and recognizing that it's all the little steps, but you need to know where they're headed.
It's all the little steps, and we need to know where they're headed,
Yeah.
and we have to
Yeah.
be able to maintain ourselves on the way. So not to get
Yes.
frustrated if things don't happen overnight, if we get pushback, etc. But to know why we are doing it, and then have the, like what I said before, and maybe have practices to keep ourselves energized and resourceful. And that can be very
Yes.
different practices for different people. I know people who go for long walks in nature,
Yeah.
and others who go to the gym, and some like me who also meditate. There are different ways, but to do so that we can maintain ourselves, that we can
Yes.
know how to keep going.
Yes. 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 You're right. Because without that sustenance, right?
It can be
It's
hard, it can be tough.
just, yeah, exactly. So let's take a step back and have a little broader view now and thinking about organizational development. And I know you have a very extensive experience in organizations and in helping them to grow and develop. And I'm wondering, in your experience, what are some of these crucial elements of organizational development that leaders or organizations often
Mm,
overlook, like they're just not mindful of, but they really should be thinking of?
mm. Um, you know, I think a really important part is just thinking of what Peter Drucker is known to have said: culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yep.
So we forget culture very often. How to, like, we have like systems change and processes change and IT systems, and including artificial intelligence, and we sometimes forget the people dimension of all that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also the culture dimension. So it's individual people, but then it's also the culture of an organization.
Yeah.
How do we change that? And that's very much, again, about mindset and also micro behaviors. Not like now we all use that new tool, but what are the micro behaviors, the micro habits that we need to actually do that? I mean, I have seen, for instance, like really difficult transitions to like more modern back office systems, like created huge problems because the teams found it so hard and boycotted their managers because they didn't want to do it. Yeah, because they had habits of, and they felt really confident in what they were doing before. And it was not enough just to tell them, now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the new tool, because they were scared. So how do we actually help the people to do it differently? And what kind of different cultures that also, because it is different habits, different behaviors, different ways of thinking. And for that also, we need leaders who model behaviors. So if something is not only concerning a small back office team, but the whole organization, then we have to see the leader who's actually like leading from the front and showing like, I'm doing this myself.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's I always tell people. I'm like, you're leading with or without a title. And it's much better that you're mindful of this. So you're thinking about how your behaviors, what they're saying to others, how others might be interpreting them.
Yes, exactly.
And I think a lot of people, especially title leaders, don't realize that they might inadvertently be encouraging bad behaviors or, hesitant behaviors, or if they're saying things about the system and then getting upset when their people aren't doing it. I mean, that is the definition of a mixed method or mixed message.
That is so true. I mean, a very basic rule, but that sometimes managers in their own frustration don't observe is like you have to help your people adopt something new, even if you yourself find it uncomfortable, or you fight your battle upstairs to do it in a different way. But once it has been decided, you're there to really help people do it and not to tell people, actually, I also don't agree with it.
Yeah.
Which is not very helpful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like once they're all doing it and we're integrated, then we might, over coffee or like, yep, I also didn't love it, but we're doing it now. Like you to think about, because then we can think more about those relationships too, right? And trust, but
Indeed.
all in the right time.
Yeah.
So let's think about, so we've kind of talked about org development, and let's think about our leadership skills. And I'm wondering, in your experience, what skills should leaders be focusing on so that they're positioned to adapt and continue to evolve? Because we know that, with technology, with politics, with climate, there's so many things that are changing organizations at a really rapid pace today.
Yeah. As you say that, the first thing that comes to my mind is learning, to be a constant learner. Because in today's world, if we don't constantly learn, we really lose. I see that myself. If I don't use artificial intelligence in my work and use it in a smart way, I become much less effective and efficient than other people who do. So same with tools on social media, etc. Like to the degree that you need it. So it's not going after every fashion, but to be out there to see what do I need to learn today and tomorrow in order to thrive in my business. And that also includes leadership. That is, what are insights and skills that I need to get to the next level and not to stagnate, and also to get to the next level, knowing that the world is evolving. That is really, really important. And then what we discussed before, being able to really see the system and not only the particles, and to remind themselves, like, I'm just getting stuck in the particles here. Let's step back and see the system. And then to really to have the courage and mental agility also to go for co-creation, the sense of merging power, to really like to see like where can I learn from others, where can we co-create something where I let go of what I think I know, and and create something larger with together with others. And then of course there's the whole dimension of personal development. I mean that's where I'm specialized also as coach, to help people like with the inside out leadership development, because that is really so critical, in particular in an age where we have more and more AI to give the added value of us humans.
Yes.
So why should not AI be the leader and I just go on holidays? No, because I am the leader because I'm a human being, and I can do different things which have to do with knowing and being able to express my feelings, connecting with other human beings, communicating in an authentic way, and showing up in person, being authentic in person, being able to listen, truly listen as a human being and not like as a machine. All these things are really important, and I think they become even more important in leadership development than they were maybe 10 or 20 years ago.
Yes, yes. And I love the word courage. And you've mentioned that a few times today. And I think it's so important because, the old system of power, in my perception, didn't take a lot of courage because it was really an equation, essentially. Like, right, we have reward or we can have punishment, and that's kind of it. So if you're not walking the walk I want you to, then you're punished. And if you do it, great, you keep climbing up this ladder. But in today's organizations, and like you said, even what we want in our communities and our homes, it is collaboration. It is kind of merging of ideas. It is being authentic and developing trust. And that can be a really hard shift, especially if you're coming from a traditional way of looking at power in organizations. Even if you're not, because I think a lot of people tend to think, well, if I don't share information about my job, you can't get rid of me. And that's not true. we know that happens. So it's better to figure out, how do I forge these relationships? And because that's not as easily replaceable as someone who's just sitting and doing one little tiny part of the organization's work on their own.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a very different, very different needs today in the field of leadership than it was like 20 years ago. Very easy to bark down a corridor, or think, well, they have to do it because I'm the boss, which especially with Gen Zs today doesn't work so well.
No, exactly. Yes. So, so we started our interview in thinking about your background, and you talked about, all of the study you've done in political science and in international relations. And I love this because I think so many students, I work with a lot of students, and they think, I'm getting this degree and this is going to be my job and that is it. And it's fun to be a little bit further down the road and be like, nope, there are going to be twists and turns you don't anticipate. But I'm wondering, Sylvia, so now where you are now, how has your study and background and expertise in political science and international relations influenced your approach to leadership and executive coaching now?
It's probably that then and now what I see is understanding human interaction and communication is key to success, whether that's in international relations or politics or in business and organizations. That's really crucial. And again, alliances are critical. So these two are have really influenced, like from the early years of my studies to what I found out there in international relations and politics, and what I keep seeing in the corporate world.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I ended up in undergrad taking an international relations class because it fit in my schedule, and it was a general education course. And it was the first time I ever realized I had interest in politics.
Mm-hmm.
So I was also studying communication, and I was like, this is interpersonal communication on a much bigger level. And these are their personalities. And this is why it's showing up this way with this particular social entity, and this way and this one. So it was really fascinating. And I love that you're integrating that in a much deeper way into the work that you're doing.
And there's also the aspect which is true in politics and in organizations of power and legitimacy. Like if everyone believes that you are legitimate, not only because you are the boss or you have the power, but because you deliver value to your people as a politician or as a boss, then people want to follow you and you're powerful.
Yeah.
Whereas when at a certain point they see this guy or this woman, they don't give us anything, people tend to withdraw.
Yeah.
And so power is, you can hold on to power, you can try to hold on to power, but being powerful in the social context of politics or of business means you have to deliver something. And if you don't deliver anything anymore, you lose your power.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it is really counterintuitive that trying to hold on to that power actually makes you less powerful.
Yes.
It's like the opposite of what your intent.
Exactly.
So, Sylvia, I have two final questions for you. And this is the way we end all of our episodes of The Communicative Leader. And these two questions are intertwined. So, the first part is for our titled leaders. And then the second part is employees of all ranks across all industries. And it is, what is the tip or the challenge or the advice for our titled leaders? And then again, what is the tip, advice, or challenge for employees of all ranks?
As we're talking about communication, what I would say as a heartfelt advice is ask more questions, because the one who asks leads. And also because you create trust with it. But you only create trust if you then truly listen. Because if you ask a question, you don't listen, you actually undermine it. But asking questions and really wanting to know what the other person has to say is very powerful, because you understand the other person better, and you determine the agenda, but you also really build trust by listening deeply to the other person and then being able to respond.
Yeah, so powerful.
So that's what I would say to leaders.
Okay. And what about our employees of all ranks across industries? What do you want to leave them with?
Maybe to get really friendly with your emotions. In the sense, it's like get to feel, know, and manage them. Because I hear so often, like, emotions, no, that doesn't have anything to do with the workplace. I am very proud because I'm now professional and I can leave my emotions outside. And I always say that doesn't work, because your emotions, they come with you whether you like it or not. They're always there. So they will leak through. If you don't know them, people will perceive that anyway, or they will make you tired and stressed if you don't get friendly with them. So it's really invigorating and de-stressing and makes you more powerful, more connected, likable, effective, if you get to feel your emotions and know them, and then also therefore channel them. So I feel angry now, but I feel this feeling, I let it pass, and I can find the words to say what I really want to say.
Yeah, that is so helpful. You're right, because I think that even 7-10 years ago, we still weren't talking about emotion in the workplace. And like you said, for a lot of people, that felt like a point of pride. But I love that idea of to feel them, know them, and manage them. And I think people underestimate how much their emotions can tell them. Right? Like they can be a
Yes,
detective and say,
absolutely.
I really hate this meeting, and they can figure
Hmm.
out, oh, it's anger, and they can figure out why they feel that anger or why they feel that frustration or resentment, and kind of tug on that thread to, I think it's a way to further make your work life what you want it to be if you can say, because I don't feel heard here, right? So
Yeah.
how do I fix this? So yeah, that's really, really, really helpful advice, and not advice we hear very often in organizations. And I think something that we do need to lean more into.
So much, so much.
Yeah. Well, Sylvia, thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your time with us. I have had such a great time. I've learned so much, and I know that our listeners will as well.
And so did I. Thank you, Leah.
All right, my friends, that wraps up our conversation today. Until next time, communicate with intention and lead with purpose. I'm looking forward to chatting with you again soon on The Communicative Leader.